Like, where does
Mm,
the human, like, what should someone be doing if they were to leverage those four pillars combined with AI right now?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, Tim. I would say first and foremost, before doing anything else, again, we have to take a step back and then figure out how do we as an organization want to negotiate. Um, and when we talk the world of negotiation, as we know, we typically divide it into positional negotiations, zero sum, I win at your expense, or you win at my expense, or collaborative negotiations where we try and work together and create the value. Um, so what I'm talking about generally is creating a matrix that basically defines how do we want to negotiate with our counterpart. So if you look at a matrix where we have a vertical and a horizontal line, the horizontal line shows how important the counterpart is to us, and the vertical line shows how important we are to the counterpart. Obviously, if you're going to negotiate with a counterpart, let's assume that you and I are negotiating, Tim, and I value you very important, and you value me very important as well. Obviously, we go to the top right corner on this matrix, right? So if both of us consider each other very important, it's obvious we have to go into a very collaborative negotiation. Not doing that would be utterly stupid and unintelligent. On the other hand, if we are in a commodity market, you're not really important to me because there's thousands of customers out there. The same thing goes the opposite way around, so you're not important to me, I'm not important to you. So we are in the bottom left corner. Then obviously, why would we waste time going into collaboration when it's a commodity? We might want to use purposely positional negotiation. So I'm not the one preaching that we should always do collaborative negotiation, but what I often see, Tim, is that negotiators accidentally stumble into a conference room and then they accidentally end up in a strategy of positional or more collaborative negotiation. Not a purpose choice, it just happens based on the mood or the counterpart's reaction, or
Mhm.
did they get a fine on the freeway on the way to the meeting, or what have you. So before we do anything else, you as an organization have to define how do we want to negotiate. The second thing you have to do before doing anything else is actually looking at your variables. Let me explain. A variable is anything that is negotiable in your organization. That could be delivery time, warranty, installation, efficiency level, what have you. What I often find, Tim, is that most organizations are negotiating on too few variables. It's the usual suspect that they are negotiating on: the price, delivery time, what have you. And I can see throughout all my work with clients worldwide that a lot of the value lies outside that typical list of the usual variables that they are negotiating on. So the thing you have to do is actually being creative and develop that list of variables, and might even want to develop that with your counterpart before you do anything else. And then you have to quantify the variables. So you need to know the cost and the benefit of one. Let me give you a quick example. I was sitting with a procurement officer the other week, and he said to me, I'm thinking about demanding from our suppliers that we should expand the line of credit from 30 days to 90 days. And I said, well, that might be a good idea. What's the value to you if you do that? And he said, I don't know. And I said, are you stupid or what? Because, when you go out there and demand a longer line of credit and you don't even know your benefit, you might put a cost to the supplier that is way bigger than your benefit. And that is not serving anybody. So what you need to do before you make a decision that you want to demand an extension on credit line, you have to figure out what is your cost of capital. Because if your cost of capital is 6%, but the supplier's cost of capital is higher than that, it doesn't really make sense because you put a higher cost on their expenses than the benefit you have. And it sounds really simple, Tim, but you wouldn't believe how many major organizations in the world that is not thinking this through. They're just putting a demand on the table, don't even know what the consequence is for themselves or the counterpart. And again, this is another example where AI can actually help us, because AI can be the critical counterpart or coach that could actually ask that question. So when you go to ChatGPT or whatever tool you want to use and dot in, I want to expand that. Could you list the critical items that I have to be aware of before I do that? AI will definitely coming back and say, have you been thinking about your cost of capital compared to the counterpart's cost of capital? So anyway.
But this is great because it's all about creativity and getting you aligned into understanding just how much value creation possibility is out there. I do like that
Mm,
example. I was lucky enough to see your book, The Smart Negotiator. I know it's coming out in September, and I think people should just get out there and get a pre-ordered copy so that they don't miss that.